Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to Career Coach Office Hours for July 8th, 2022. I take some time on Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern, answering questions I've received in advance of the show or in chat that deal with job search, hiring more effectively, management, leadership, dealing with particular workplace issues. And if you've got such a question, just put that question into chat and I'll get to it today. I hope, because I do have quite a few that I've already received. But if I don't, I'll get to it on the next show and hopefully help you there. But most of the time, I intersperse this stuff. I'll also mention you should visit my website, thebiggamehunter.us, to schedule time for a free discovery call, a coaching session, to visit my blog where I've got more than 12,000 searchable posts that you can watch, listen to, or read that will help you without a doubt. It will help you find work more quickly, hire more effectively, manage better. You get the idea. And I'll also say, I also have my podcast, No BS Job Search Advice Radio, in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where it's a video podcast, Amazon Music, Google Play, lots of different places. And you ought to subscribe to it, as well as jobsearchtv.com on YouTube. You can also download it as an app on Amazon. So if you've got a Fire TV or a Fire Stick, there's just lots of different ways I share information. I also have No BS career coaching advice. That's a newsletter I put out twice weekly on LinkedIn. Bear with me 1 second. And there's a LinkedIn user who has a question for me that I'll come to next. And I'll just say that, I put out a newsletter on alternate Mondays, No BS career advice. Next issue is coming out on Monday. If you're not subscribed, do so. And, I'm also going to encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/the Big Game Hunter. So the question is, do I think it's okay to take time away from job search and interviewing to recharge? If you can't perform on your interviews, take a little bit of time. However, notice the key part of this is a little bit of time. We're not talking about taking a month off. We're not talking about going on a 3-month cruise. A little time off, because unless you have the means to do so. But the idea is for your career. Overall, taking a little time off is not bad, but you can't take a lot of time off, especially as we go into recessionary times, as I think we are now. And thus, you want to be able to land that next role. Now, question for you is, are you currently working? If you're not working, if you're unemployed, take a little time off after you get the offer. Now, if emotionally you can't perform, then take a couple of days, a long weekend, something like that gives you a little bit of a break so that you can get your juices back. But maybe what you need is some advice about how to perform better in your search and on your interviews. And maybe the issue is you're not performing well enough and having hit your head against the wall too many times, you just feel like you need to get away. Get away for a couple of days, but then come back and learn what you need to know in order to deliver on your interviews, to get more interviews, to enhance your networking skills, to connect with people, all the usual stuff that people do in their job search. So don't take a lot of time. And if you're financially not able to do much of anything, you're better off taking the break after you get a job that you're willing to take than extending it, putting more financial pressure on yourself, as so many people do. So I'm sorry it's a vague answer, but I don't have more information to work with. I don't know your seniority or lack thereof. Uh, I don't know your financial situation, nor should I. But maybe what you need is help performing well on interviews. So I'll encourage you to visit my website, again, thebiggamehunter.us, and there's just a ton there that'll help you. And I'm sorry I missed that message from you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I hope you get some value out of today's show. Okay. Again, if someone has a question for me, a comment, just put it into chat. I'd be happy to take a stab at answering your question. Okay. Let me go to the next one. Should software engineering companies hire for culture fit or culture add? Okay. So the answer is yes. Yes on both counts. So the issue comes down to what's really needed. Now, the problem with culture fit and culture add is most people, bear with me 1 second, LinkedIn user, I'll come to you as soon as I answer this question. So for most people who are evaluating for culture, you think you know how to do it, but really don't. And I say that because job hunters are in good behavior, but so are employers. I know that because each of you is trying to put on a good performance for one another. And I won't repeat the story that I tell time and again about how I quickly learned that job hunters were on good behavior, and it took a long time for me to figure out employers were too. So I'll just say the most important thing that you can do is, as an employer, start off with someone being qualified, interested, and available. Qualified first. And then from the cultural standpoint, define your environment as you see it. The good, the bad, the ugly about it, so that there are few surprises. And I'm going to politely say most of you are going to sanitize it anyway, but you got to tell them about some of your problems. And you can start this part of the conversation by saying, if I told you this was a perfect environment, I'd be lying to you. And I refuse to do that. Every organization has its problems. Sometimes we work harder than others. Other times, one or two of my people I have to, say I didn't hire well. I hope you would be different. What didn't make them a good hire? Well, there's a couple of factors. And one is, I thought they had this, you just go through some of the things that are problematic in the environment. So that this way they know what they're stepping into, good and bad. Don't just sell the positives because you're going to exaggerate those. Don't just talk about the negatives. You're going to exaggerate those. Give them a balanced answer. Okay. So coming back to this question in chat, if you're extending an offer and you want to ensure that you have time before you start, how do you handle that with the employer? Easy. So if you're working, you tell them, I'm going to give 3 weeks notice where I am. I'm committed to joining. I'm going to take 2 weeks off to give my employer notice. I'm going to take a week's vacation and then come join you. That's simple. If you're not working, you just simply say, this job search has been exhausting. And I'm going to take a week off in order to charge my battery so I can walk in on the Monday morning of my start and be ready to roll. So I look forward to joining. If you need me to sign any documents in advance, I'm happy to do it. But I'll be seeing you in a week's time. Looking forward to joining. And it's not just what you say, but how you say it. If you're not comfortable being as casual as me right now, practice what you're going to say so that in this way you can be as casual as I'm being. If they say, oh, no, we need you on Monday, I've got tickets already booked. My wife, husband, or partner had them booked for this period of time, as it turned out. I would have taken a week off here regardless of my search, but thank goodness you're hiring me. I'll be coming back and joining a week from Monday. And you smile, you're the friendly person. And if they start talking about rescinding the offer, which they won't do, but if they start talking that way, consider that you dodged a bullet about joining. Seriously, consider that you dodged a bullet, because when else are they going to pull this kind of crap on you? And I'm saying pull this kind of crap on you because it is crap. But don't fear, seriously, don't fear that sort of thing from happening. It's such a statistical aberration as to not really be worthwhile mentioning. So I hope that was helpful to you. We go to the next question. What are some insidious ways employers hide the fact they've let you go because you're viewed as too old within their leadership? Well, insidious to me means subtle. So the most subtle way they can do it is not tell you. That's normally the way that it's done. So since most organizations will do some version of performance review during the time that you're working there, if there's a problem, then what will happen is they'll start signaling you that they have a problem with your performance. No performance issues, and they let you go because you're too old. Well, normally they'll couch it as, things are slowing down. We have to look at our head count. And frankly, we have a lot of people we're going to be cutting. It's not just you. It's probably 8% of the workforce here. So I'm sorry. We're going to be letting you go. Now, insidious, again, goes into subtle, sneaky, nefarious. You know when it's ageism. You can feel it. You're delivering, and there's no problem. Someone I know lost their job in education, and she was set up for a fall. Every year, apparently, the district head picks on one employee and pushes them out the door. And it tends to be older professionals, often, well, let's just stick with older professionals, because they want to replace them with someone younger. Read that as less expensive as well. So I'll just simply say the most insidious way is to not tell you anything, because that's the definition of insidious, subtle. And I am going to put the negative spin on it, sneaky. Okay. Next question is, if you don't show up for work on your first day, should your boss fire you? Well, I think the first thing, I'm going to talk to you is if you were working for me. Number one is my first response would be, these days, I can't believe they ghosted me. Let me try reaching out, calling them, and making sure that they're okay. If you were okay and you didn't call me to tell me you weren't going to start, I would fire you. If you didn't answer the phone when I called or respond to my texts, I would give you the benefit of the doubt for a little while, but I'd expect to hear from you, because the reality is, if you're a new hire, you're an adult. You're supposed to contact your employer if you're not going to be in at work on any day, not just the first one, but the 401st one as well. You don't just not show up for work. So if I didn't reach you, I would be concerned. And if you walked in the next day, the first thing I would do is bring you into my office and have a chat with you. Where were you yesterday? Why didn't I hear from you? Is your phone working? Because, again, it's not like the old days where phones were stationary and there were lots of problems with them. Mobile phones, come on. Phones with you every place. It's not like you couldn't call. And if you didn't want to talk to me, you could have contacted HR saying, I know I'm supposed to start today, but fill in the blank happened. And I have to be with whoever it is. I'll be there tomorrow. Should I come in to see you to fill out paperwork? They'll say yes. Great. Please let my manager know I'm not a bad person. Grovel. They deserve your groveling performance. So I'll just simply say, I would fire you if I reached you, and if I couldn't reach you, I'd listen first and then make a decision as to why I should keep you or let you go. Okay. Let's see now. Can non-alphas make good leaders? Yes. Leadership takes many different forms. Apparently, you have the idea that alphas are supposed to be, the leadership reflects an aggressive style. And that's not always the case. Some organizations want that and like that. However, most organizations want emotional intelligence from people. They don't want an alpha who's going to be diving down people's lungs. I don't know if you can hear a background noise. I can. Someone is gardening, so my apologies if you can. So I'll just simply say non-alphas can make very good leaders because what they have the capacity to do is to listen carefully and deal with situations effectively, working through people, not by being bossy, not by being a tyrant, but by being effective. Okay. How do you reject, let's see, a job offer that's not the original job position you applied for? The job position they're offering is not what you'd like to do at all. Easy. Thank you for the offer, but this is neither the job I applied for or one that I'm interested in. I'd love to work in your organization. And, the fact is, I'd like to be doing work along the lines of what I originally applied for. Well, we don't see you as being qualified for that. Okay. And I don't see myself doing this job. Please don't take that as being disrespectful, but we haven't talked about this role in a way where I see that it makes sense for me. It's work that historically I haven't liked doing. I don't know why you switched me over to this. The idea that you don't see me as being suitable for this role is the conclusion. I don't see anything along the way that tells me why. So, do you have an explanation? And they'll try and come up with some generic excuse. I'm not interested. Thank you. I really appreciate the offer. So, I'm just going to remind you, if you've got a question for me about job search, hiring, management, leadership, want advice about a workplace issue, a career transition, something relating to your professional environment, put your question into chat. I'll get to it today. I just want to remind you folks that I'm hired to provide no BS career advice to people and organizations. That's what firms hire me to provide. And that can be involved with job search, hiring, managing better, leadership, advice for particular workplace issues, salary negotiations. The full life cycle of a person and their career is what I help with. So I'd love to help you as well. At my website, you can schedule time for a free discovery call, a coaching session. Find out about my blog, which has more than 12,000 searchable posts, my books and guides. There's just a lot there that'll help you. And I'll also mention, there we go. Subscribe to jobsearchtv.com on YouTube. You can download it for Amazon as an app and watch me there. And you can subscribe to No BS Job Search Advice Radio, which is the #1 podcast on Apple Podcasts for job search. We've been on air for more than 11 years, more than 2,400 episodes. No show is close to mine in, in terms of episodes. There's just a great repository of information available to you. So let's go to the next question. Let's see now. Okay. When an executive at the company where you've been doing contract work is keeping you in the dark about the status of an offer to hire you full time, does it do any harm to look for a job in the meantime? No, you should look for a job. You know, they're stringing you along. And I'm assuming that you're asking on a regular basis, contract's up in another 6 weeks. You plan on extending me. I'm not sure yet. I'll get back to you. Another week goes by. Hi. Any news on that extension or converting me full time? Nope, nothing yet. I started looking for a job immediately. Um, they're ducking the answer. That's my opinion. They're ducking the answer, and they don't want to tell you they're not going to extend you or convert you. So you have a responsibility to yourself, and they have a responsibility to themselves and their organization. And as such, I started looking for a job no later than a month out, and probably sooner is the truth of it. So that in this way, if I liked working for this firm, minimally I have to protect myself financially so that I'm not harmed in all of this. So no, go out there and look for a job. Hope you find something, and I hope there's no gap in your finances that occurs. How should I ask a candidate about their citizenship status in an interview? Well, you can't ask whether they're a U.S. citizen. What you can ask is, what's your legal right to work in the United States? That's it. What is your legal right to work in the United States? And thus, they'll tell you what, I'm a U.S. citizen, I have permanent residence, or they'll use the slang of a green card because they used to be green. I have an H-1B visa. How much time remains on it? Great. Have you had an extension yet? Great. F1 visa. They'll tell you what their visa status is, and you just ask clarifying questions if you need to, and thus understand what's involved with converting them. The truth is, you should know what your firm's policies are about that in order to make sure that you can address this individual properly about your ability to hire them. So don't bring them in for the interview. You can do this during the screening call. Have HR do that for you. If you're the hiring manager, this should be screened in advance of you actually meeting them. Yeah, this next question I really like because it requires some texture. Will wearing a mask to an interview affect my chances of getting the job if the company does not require them? So I'm recording this in July 2022. And the answer to that is maybe. But probably if you don't address why you're wearing the mask. So if you say to someone, I'll speak from the perspective, I'm 71. If I were interviewing for a job, which I'm not, by the way, if I'm interviewing for a job and I wore a mask to an interview, I would walk in. I would, of course, notice that people are not wearing masks, would sit down and say, before we start, I just want to simply say, I'm wearing a mask because I'm at risk. I have a health concern. I fit a demographic that's most at risk. So I apologize for wearing the mask, but I have to be protective since I don't know you and your circumstances. They'll say, hey, no problem. Or another example is, um, I appreciate you talking to me. Let me just speak to the mask that I'm wearing. My parents are visiting, and they're here from whatever country it is. And I don't want to spread this thing in case I've picked it up from them. So, excuse me for wearing the mask. I'm trying to be respectful of you and your organization and not spreading uh, anything I've picked up during a stage where may not be, um, where I may not have symptoms yet. I'm just trying to be cautious. And another thing to say, here's another thing to say, you know, and let's just keep it at those two. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing you can say is, uh, my wife, husband, or partner has an illness right now. We're concerned about her picking up something from me. So, excuse me. Like, for example, my wife had open heart surgery during the first year of the pandemic. There were times that were pretty scary, like not long after we had lockdown, she started to not feel well. And there was a concern that she had COVID, and she's a heart patient, and we're wearing masks in the house. Anytime I'm going upstairs, I'm calling up to make sure she's not in a place where I'm going to be, because we didn't want it passed to me. We didn't want it passed back and forth. Um, Remember at that time, we didn't really know anything about COVID. So the idea very simply is, you have to address it in order to make sure that they understand you're not just a crackpot weirdo, even though you may be one, that's okay. But, you know, I'm sure if you got to work there, you'd be in a situation where with time, you might feel more comfortable taking the mask off. Your choice. I'm not going to judge. I'm just going to simply say, address it during the course of the interview. I had a job interview and the hiring manager had me wait for an hour without acknowledging me. I went to the receptionist and declined the job. The boss called me and was angry for leaving. I told him that my time is just as valuable. Was I wrong? I think I would have said it differently. So, somewhere around the 15-minute mark, I would have walked to reception and said, I had an appointment at 1 o'clock, and it's 1:15. Could you give me a sense of how long she or he is going to be? So by doing that, she or he can respond and go, we've got a situation here. Why don't you come back in an hour? And I'd be ready. So I don't want to be rude to you. I don't want to be disrespectful, but there's a crisis that just hit. I have to deal with. Would that be okay? If not, we can reschedule. I apologize. But instead, you ended it without seeking that clarification. Now, they were angry for leaving. That wasn't right either. Your time is as valuable as theirs, but you were wrong in that you didn't handle it as well as you might have. That's my opinion. It's okay if you have a different opinion. I just think this is the way to do it, and do it like a pro. Okay? I'm going to field one more question unless something comes into chat. So bear with me. I just want to copy the question. And the answer, the question is, as a CEO, there we go, would you prefer employees at any level to speak to you as a normal person, or do you demand respect and want them to treat you like a king or queen? Why? The question bothers me. It bothers me because you think respect reflects a king or queen, where it should reflect any individual that you interact with. That is the way you should be dealing with a normal person. How were you talking, or how do you think is appropriate to speak to someone like one of the girls, one of the guys. Hey, like you're going to mess around with them in some way? No, of course not. So I would say give respect. Seriously, give everyone respect, not just the CEO, for any person. It's not about treating them like a king or queen. It's like treating them like a normal person with respect. Are you supposed to be rude? Of course not. But that you separate normal person and king or queen as being the only people who demand respect or deserve respect, I should say, it's immature on your part. Apparently, something happened where you were rude to them and they called you out. So I'll just say, you were rude. Don't be rude. Okay. So that's today's show. I hope you found it helpful. And if you're watching it on YouTube, give it a like, share it, do something that lets people know it was worthwhile. On LinkedIn, by the way, as I'm doing this, if you're watching me on some platform and you have a question for me, put your question in the chat. I'll come back to you and answer your question. Okay. But in the meantime, if you've got a question, put it into chat and visit my website, thebiggamehunter.us, to schedule time for a free discovery call, a coaching session, to visit my blog, which has more than 12,000 searchable posts that you can watch, listen to, or read. Find out about my courses, which you can rent or buy, my books and guides. There's a ton there to help. Also, subscribe to jobsearchtv.com on YouTube. It's also available as an app on Amazon. So if you've got a Fire TV or a Fire Stick, you can watch me there. Also, No BS Job Search Advice Radio is #1 in Apple Podcasts for job search. More than 2,400 episodes over more than 11 years. Subscribe to that. Subscribe to jobsearchtv.com. I can generate a lot of great content that will help you. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. Have a terrific day, and most importantly, be great. Take care.